All right. I'm very excited for our next speaker, our first fireside chat session of the event. Most people are here in person. We made like one or two exceptions, including for CZ, who had a scheduling conflict. So we're thrilled to be able to get him virtually for this fireside chat. If we can get him on the monitor, I think we can be good to go. I guess one more. There he is. Go ahead. Take that last one out of the way.
Hey, Ryan.
CZ, thank you for joining us. CZ, is this how you do all your one-on-ones with one person with beaming hot light and then you from all sides?
Actually, no. I attended the Binance Blockchain Week last week in person, and I go to a bunch in-person ones, and sometimes, yeah.
Well, I meant with your team, your one-on-ones, just because you're an imposing figure. So I'm giving you a hard time, but thrilled to have you here. I'll start with my toughest question, CZ. 2013, Mt. Gox. 2017, Poloniex. 2021, Binance. How are you going to break the streak of this 4-year turnover cycle for top exchanges?
I think we got to the world's biggest exchange status in terms of trading volume in 2017. So we were there 2017 till now. Poloniex was there, Bittrex was there also in 2017. I think they were but they were early 2017. They became the biggest exchanges in sequence. And but by December, I think it was late December, that we became the largest exchange from 2017 till now, by most matrices. I think we broke that 4-year thing already, but knock on wood, let's hope we keep it.
What does it take for investments as you continue to try to innovate, stay ahead of the curve? We're going to talk about BNB chain and versus Binance, centralized versus decentralized exchange, that whole spectrum in a minute. But in your mind, what are some of the biggest unsolved problems in centralized financial services for crypto? And where are you spending most of your time and energy now to upgrade Binance and get it through to the next phase?
So to be honest, I think for the centralized CeFi space, the biggest challenge has always been KYC. How do we do KYC solutions for 180 countries around the world? Some countries don't even have street addresses. They live in a village. They don't have utility bills. How do we do proof of address? So so we need to localize KYC solutions for centralized exchanges that are easy to use. That's always a challenge. And many exchanges just don't do that. But Binance does full KYC for our users. On the DeFi world, I think the biggest challenge is actually just wallets. Today, most wallets are not designed for average person. Most average people cannot hold their own private key securely using the software, using the tools we provide them today. So I think on both fronts, we got to solve those problems.
Are you spending much time in building a personal wallet for your users as well? We haven't heard about that.
Well, we have Trust Wallet, which is the most downloaded, mobile wallet. We invested in iSafePal, which is a hardware wallet. We have a number of other investments in other wallets. So yeah, we do have a number of offerings in those areas.
When you think about the split between services, the centralized exchange, the staking services, all the other things that start to look like a traditional exchange or traditional bank even, and that tends to be the direction that some of the big crypto custodians are heading. How much time do you think we have for those centralized exchanges to be the real juggernauts of the industry? Or are you starting to see a gradual osmosis to truly decentralized solutions? Because there's usability challenges, there's custody challenges. It feels like for the last 5 years, decentralized exchange was going to eat into centralized exchange volumes, or I think the rumors of centralized exchange deaths are greatly exaggerated. But how do you split time and energy, and how far off, if ever, do you think we are from actually having a truly decentralized system where individuals are, by and large, controlling their own assets and trading on protocols versus centralized services?
I think it's going to take a number of years. So I think eventually, if you look at the eventual situation, 10, 20, 30 years from now, decentralized exchanges will definitely be bigger than centralized exchanges. But today, the majority of normal people are not even in crypto. And the guys who are in crypto are the early adopters, and are the technical guys. They are used to backing up your own private key, encrypted and sharded in multiple places, and have a way to give it to your kids when you're not around. Those things are very hard to do for a normal person today. And so 90-something% of the population still don't have any kind of crypto. And for those guys, when they come to crypto, it's easier for them to use an email password. And if they lose that, they can call customer support. I think that's an easier experience for most guys to get in. But once they become more technically stronger, and also once the tools for wallets and for keeping private keys become easier to use, those guys will see more and more people shifting to DeFi, I think. So there's two dynamics. I think longer term, people will shift to DeFi, but in the short term, we see the majority of people are not even in CeFi or not even in crypto yet. And those guys will probably use CeFi as the first hop into crypto.
Talk a little bit about the transition you made a couple weeks ago to BUSD, right? So on the one hand, you've got BNB chain. You've been very vocal about the need for decentralization and kind of building both ends of the spectrum here. At the same time, everything is now moved to BUSD, Binance's in-house stablecoin. And you have allowed for some withdrawals of different stablecoins. But is that another centralization vector that people should be thinking about? Or how do you make this distinction, or how do you maintain balance between centralizing more of the industry and more of the stablecoins in particular versus being truly interoperable with some of these other potentially competitive solutions?
So I think there's a few different concepts here. People very often kind of combine them together. I would like to separate them out a little bit. There's a centralization versus decentralization, which we can talk about. And then there is how do we make things the easiest for people to use? And how do we make it the most most protected for users? Liquidity, if you split into different pairs, or through different countries or stuff like that, liquidity is much better when they combine. When you have a combined order book liquidity, the liquidity is much deeper. The slippage is much shallower. You get less of the spikes that happen on graphs. When spikes happen, people may get liquidated, etc. So liquidity is actually the best protection for users. And that's the main reason we combine all the stablecoin liquidity into one. There's many misconceptions about this announcement. People think we stopped supporting USDC, which is not true. USDC deposits work on Binance, and you can withdraw them on Binance. When you deposit, it's converted one-to-one to BUSD, and you can trade just like that. So you at zero loss, no slippage. And now you're trading a combined liquidity pool that's easiest for people to trade. And then when you're done trading, you want to withdraw your BUSD balance, you can withdraw in USDC, one-to-one conversion, no loss. So this is the easiest user experience. It was mainly from that optimizing the user experience that we started. We did this. So people thought we don't support USDC, which is not true. You can deposit, you can withdraw USDC. Once it comes in, it's one-to-one conversion into a large liquidity pool. So that's one aspect. Will this increase the total value or total amount for BUSD? Probably yes. But with that centralization, BUSD today is still smaller than USDC and still smaller than Tether. So we want to provide multiple options for our users. And BUSD is the most fiat-backed stablecoin. Even though it's called Binance USD, it's actually not issued by us. It's issued by Paxos, which is a NYDFS regulated entity, and they're fully audited, etc. So we just picked one that's most backed by fiat currencies. So that was really that. The centralization versus the decentralization part doesn't really, in my mind, doesn't really come into this because that's a much bigger discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, a dollar is a dollar, I guess. So maybe that's the easier one. You all, as an exchange, need to be somewhat neutral on assets. And I think historically you've been pretty careful about that. But when it comes to integrating with protocols and building tools on different protocols, there's BNB, which is EVM compatible, and then there's Ethereum, and then there's everything else. I'm curious how your team is splitting time thinking about solutions and infrastructure on roll-ups, whether it's ZK roll-ups, optimistic roll-ups, Solana, Cosmos, other non-EVM compatible chains. How are you making those decisions? Kind of where are you most excited looking forward? And do you think that there's ultimately maybe two operating systems, right? EVM compatible and then maybe one more, or do you think that there's going to be half dozen or a dozen different types of protocols and standards for computing in particular and secure settlement of crypto transactions?
Sure. So Binance today is a large ecosystem. There's a centralized exchange. There's a bunch of DeFi projects. There's a blockchain. There's a BNB chain. There's different wallets. There's CoinMarketCap. There's a lot of different parts in the ecosystem, and there's many projects on BNB chain. So the way I like to look at this is I spend quite a lot of my time on the centralized exchange. That's where my experience is. That's where most of my knowledge is. I'm actually not very knowledgeable about different consensus mechanisms, ZK rollups, and like if you look at Vitalik, he's the guy that is very deep in those kind of technology stuff. If you look at his tweet, he tweets about different mathematical formulas, which to most people probably do not understand. And so that's kind of my personal time. But from a ecosystem perspective, different parts in the ecosystem, they need to grow and compete independently. They need to stand up on their own. So, for example, from the Binance centralized exchange perspective, we want there to be as many blockchains, as many tokens, as many strong projects as possible. Because if there's only one project, then there's not much to trade, and then the centralized exchange actually won't have much of a business. From the BNB chain team's perspective, there may be some overlaps with Ethereum. There may be some competition, but today the industry is so early, it's not even competition. From the BNB chain perspective, they want to list on multiple exchanges. They want to be facilitating multiple DeFi projects. So they work with multiple centralized exchanges, not just Binance.com. So different parts of the CoinMarketCap works with all projects, all exchanges in the ecosystem that carries data for all exchanges. So different parts of the ecosystem needs to. Each component needs to collaborate with every player in the ecosystem. CoinMarketCap competes with some other news aggregator or stuff like that, but that's okay. That's friendly competition. Speaking of competition, today the market is not saturated. Like today, the global market adoption is probably between 1% to 3%. To fight within that 1% to 3%, fighting for additional like 1 or 2% market share, it's meaningless. Let's grow the pie. Let's grow the pie by 10x. Let's grow the pie by 100x. And then everybody benefits. So crypto is so early. We're not in a saturated market. So for this reason, we rarely look at competition and try to grab market share from them. This is why we spend most of the time educating the masses, talking with different governments, different countries. We try to grow the market, which is much, much better for everyone. So we don't view the other players as competition.
I like to think of myself as a good writer, CZ, but for those in the crowd that haven't read it, the 2017 vision statement that you had for Binance was one of the most well-articulated, best vision pieces I've read from a founder, quite honestly. And I don't want to butcher the exact line, but I think it was tokens are not just good, but necessary. And some of the articulation was around how this is a new type of asset, how all the benefits and all the novelties that the tokens can bring versus traditional assets. So one, I'd encourage folks to read it, and two, I'd love to hear how your thinking has changed or evolved, if at all, as we've kind of run into these brick walls with a lot of different international regulatory agencies that seem to be leaning in the direction of trying to retrofit 80-year-old, 90-year-old security and commodities law to kind of fit this new paradigm, when most people in this room might believe there are attributes of currency, there are attributes of securities, there's attributes of loyalty tokens, but there's something new, right? So that vision that you laid out, it's a good philosophy. In practice, has anything changed, or how do you think about the next couple of years of engagement to make sure that we can not throw the baby out with the bathwater and we all can collectively work towards that vision of the necessary solutions that tokens can offer?
Sure. Well, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. Thanks for well, first of all, thanks for the positive comment. So in 2017, we said, look, we're going to do the centralized exchange. We're going to do DeFi. We're going to do futures. We're going to build an ecosystem. Many founders say that, but we got very lucky that we actually somehow the community together built it. So that's great. On the regulatory side, I think we are actually seeing a lot of progress in the positive direction for regulatory frameworks. I think we should expect that when the regulators look at this industry, the first thing they would do is to borrow from what they know already. How they regulate banks, how they regulate exchanges, and move that in here. And then later on, they'll realize, wait a second, this is a car, not a horse. This thing fits differently. You can't put a saddle on it, stuff like that. So when first cars came on, there's no steering wheels. People drove the car with two straps. Steering wheel came later. So I think we're still kind of at that stage in the industry. There are many positive progress though. Like Dubai set up a new, completely new regulatory agency called VERA, Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. The reason they did this is because they didn't want the traditional securities stocks market regulator to regulate it, because then they have a lot of stock market things to carry. They didn't want a commodity office to carry it, because that comes with a different set of baggages. They didn't want a central bank to do that. That has a different set of things. The thing I like to explain is when people ask, like, what's the internet? Is internet a radio, a magazine, a TV? Well, it's not quite any of those things. Internet, today I articulated as internet is just a new technology for transferring information. And it's now we have internet TV, internet radio, internet magazines, and internet e-commerce, search engines, virtual conferences, etc. So with blockchain is just a new technology for transferring value. That's it. But with this new technology, we now already are changing the way people raise money, people invest, people do transactions, people do cross-border transactions. We can do micro-transactions. We change the way, we change new business models. So business models are going to be different now than before. So all of this are changes, and we're just at the beginning. So we're just at the, I would say, World Wide Web. HTML1 phase. There's many more we can build. So I think the classification of crypto today, people just focus on, is it a security or is it a commodity, especially in the US. But the rest of the world, people are setting up new regulatory agencies to regulate this new asset class, understanding that there's many new different things that's going to come. There will be some cryptocurrencies that's similar to securities, that may be similar to commodities, that may be similar to a currency, but Bitcoin does all three. I mean, what are you going to do? So there are many questions on how to address some of this. I think we're just exploring what we have to do, but I think the progress is being made quite positively. Just today, just like a couple of hours ago, EU, the first draft of MiCA, which is supposed to be which will be the trans-European regulatory framework. The draft a month ago was, no stablecoins based in US dollars. We were very actively communicating with many of the players in the EU, saying this is bad for the users, because today 80% of the liquidity is in US dollar based stablecoins. If EU cuts themselves out, their liquidity will be much worse, and that will be worse for the users. So but today, that draft went in where they removed this restriction. So we're making positive changes here and there. So it's going to be a long process. It's not going to be an overnight event.
Well, I think we're only going to have time for one more question. I wanted to ask you about NFTs, but we have a long time before that market's coming back, so I guess we can save that for next year. I'm waiting to get hissed at or booed, but everybody that is invested in NFTs is clearly not at this conference. So we'll have a little bit more on that later. Don't worry, everybody. Instead, CZ, you have good perspective, having been through a couple of cycles, having worked with a few of the earliest kind of pioneers in the space, even before Binance. As you talk to entrepreneurs in your network or kind of other folks that are coming in, maybe they were attracted in 2021 and kind of early this year by the hype, and that was their initial entree into crypto, but then they got hooked, and now they're going to stay for a bear cycle. what is your kind of key takeaway for them? What advice do you tend to give, or where would you have folks focus their efforts, given we might be at the beginning of another multi-year consolidation and kind of building phase versus the go-go days of last year?
Yeah, so if you look in history, 2013, so what I like to tell people is don't just look at the price. Look at the number of applications, look at number of users, look at number of developers, look at the industry growth. That's a much better long-term indication of where we're going. So in 2013, this industry is called the Bitcoin industry. Blockchain is not even a big word. Nobody says it's the blockchain industry. So it's just Bitcoin. That's kind of when I got in, went through a bear market. 2017 was kind of the ICO market, like anyone can issue a token. This is where entrepreneurs have all kind of fancy white papers, and they're raising money. And that's just mainly because of Ethereum ERC20. Now anyone can issue a token very easily. Now we have DeFi in 2020. We have NFTs last year. Well, now we're going through a correction. We have GameFi, we have Metaverse. We have a lot more coming out. So the number of people in this industry are growing, and the number of applications are growing. We're still pretty simple, to be honest. There's still a lot more to be built. So when looking at from that perspective, I think the industry is actually growing pretty healthily. Price corrections are actually good in some senses. I know people who have lost money probably will hate to hear this, but it weeds out the weak projects, and so the stronger projects can continue to build. So it actually keeps the industry healthier in the long term. I know that may be controversial, but no industry grows like a straight line up to the right. So that just doesn't happen. So I would say, look, pick the projects you like, pick the projects you know and you believe in, diversify your risks if you're an investor. Don't put all your money in one coin, and don't put all the money you need next month into crypto. That's just bad. So yeah, and just ride out the winter. Historically, it's been 4 year cycles, and historically the drop is faster and the recovery is much slower. So it's usually a 1 year drop, 3 year recovery. But past does not predict the future. I cannot predict the future. So do learn about market risk and learn to protect yourself.
CZ, we packed a lot into a 20-minute section, so appreciate you being with us today, and look forward to seeing you in person again soon. Thank you, CZ.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me.